Alright, hello everyone and welcome to NFL Discussion Throwing in the Towel Week 12 edition. This is a weekly segment on this channel where every week I pick one team and throw in the towel on their season. Now we are in the post-Thanksgiving stretch of NFL football, and it keeps getting tighter and tighter in terms of trying to find teams to eliminate. Well, maybe not tighter and tighter in terms of teams to eliminate, but maybe a little bit easier to figure out who's a pretender, who's a contender. And over in the NFC, it's kind of tight towards the back end of the wild card section. And then in the AFC, though, there's a couple teams with some injuries at key positions that have certainly kind of sunk their season. And with that, we're going to go ahead and get right into it, starting with the AFC East. One team represented this week, and that is the Buffalo Bills. Sunday in Philadelphia, the Bills had a golden opportunity to make a huge statement to not only get back to 2 games over 500, but to show that they remain a legitimate Super Bowl contender. And for a time, it looked like the Bills were going to pull it off. Instead, Jake Elliott makes that field goal. Game goes into overtime, with the Bills choosing to kneel out the final 20 seconds. And in overtime, Jalen Hurts would score the game-winning touchdown. Now a 4th straight AFC title appears to be out of the picture. Miami is probably going to win the division and making the playoffs. And without that division title, making the playoffs is not a sure bet for this Bills team. AFC North, couple teams, Browns and Bengals. And for the Bengals, well, Jake Brown is at Joe Burrow. That's not breaking news. The Bengals knew that, and also knew that in order to have success moving forward, they were going to need to have success running the ball. Unfortunately for them, their opponents on Sunday, the Steelers, knew that as well. And Sunday, they completely eradicated Cincy's ground game, limiting the team to 25 yards, only 11 carries. Not a recipe for success. And for the Browns, what they have accomplished without their starting quarterback and best offensive player, that being Nick Chubb, is impressive. But now the team's best defensive player, Myles Garrett, is also banged up, although there's no word on him officially missing any action. Although it sounds like if he can play, he's going to try to play through it. And the team could be looking at starting either B.J. Walker or Joe Flacco this week against the Rams. B.J. Walker, we've already seen what he can do. Flacco, well, who knows what he has left and if he can do anything for his team. Right now, a late-season tailspin is looking more likely than a playoff run, and that's a very Cleveland outcome to what was not long ago a promising season, which is a shame because this Browns team has been carried by great play from their defense, and unfortunately injuries have just ruined the offense and pretty much just ruined this team's season. AFC South, one team this week, the Houston Texans, and even though they lost on Sunday, the legend that is C.J. Stroud continues to grow. After 304 passing yards against the Jaguars, he has more passing yards through the first 11 games of his career than any quarterback in NFL history. He's the only rookie quarterback in NFL history to top 300 passing yards in 4 consecutive games, and he's on pace to become the first 5,000-yard rookie the NFL has ever seen. Whether the Texans win a playoff game or even make the postseason, they already won the 2023 season, which actually they won before the season started, and that was the moment they drafted Stroud. That was a win. Their season's been a success. It's going to be tough for them to try to make the postseason, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did because this team plays very well. But, I don't think they do, but again, I wouldn't be surprised if they did. AFC West, one team this week, the Los Angeles Chargers, and next week they play the Patriots, and they will probably win that game because the Patriots are a terrible team. But let's be real, this Chargers team, after that loss to the Ravens, and now sitting at, I think, 4-8 is their record, they aren't going to the playoffs. 4-7, 4-8, but regardless of what it is, they're not going to the playoffs. Not with a pass defense that couldn't cover a bed with a sheet, not with a wide receiver crop that's been ravaged by injuries, and not with a head coach who seemingly never made a bad in-game decision he didn't like. The Chargers should be looking ahead to 2024, and step one in that regard is most likely a new head coach. So these are the representatives in the AFC this week: the Bills in the East, the Bengals in the North, the Texans in the South, and the Chargers in the West. So of these 4 teams, who is representing the AFC? Well, it's not the Bills or the Texans, it's the Los Angeles Chargers. So a bit of a tough choice between Jake Browning-led Bengals team versus a Chargers team coached by Brandon Staley. Bit of a tough choice right there, but between the two, I like the Chargers less. Over in the NFC in the East, well, no representatives this week. The Commanders and Giants, the towel was thrown in on those two teams. The Commanders got blown out on Thanksgiving and fired their defensive coordinator subsequently. Not that that's really going to change anything, but it's just an early start to the firing process for that team. And then the Giants, they get a win. Well, it's over the Patriots, so although I do gotta give credit to Tommy DeVito, I had a rough start, but he's steadily improving, and he's playing some solid football with what he has for a supporting cast, so good on him. As for the other two teams, Eagles and the Giants, both of those teams get wins. NFC North, a couple teams this week, the Lions and the Vikings. And for the Vikings, who knew that a quarterback on his third team since August might not be a franchise savior? Yes, Dobbs' scrambling ability makes him entertaining to watch, but there's a reason he only won one start with the Cardinals, and part of that reason is bad decision making and turnovers. If the Vikings want to move on for Kirk Cousins after the season, I guess, but the notion that Dobbs would be anything more than a stopgap was always a fantasy. And Monday night the clock struck midnight for Cinderella. So yes, there's no denying Dobbs came in, had a solid start to his tenure, backed by some good defensive play. But past couple weeks though, the shine is worn off. Rough outing against the Broncos, but also gotta give credit to the Broncos defense. They play good football, but then you play a Bears team in what was just an ugly football game, and even though your defense tried to help you out, you just couldn't help yourself out, and you ended up throwing 4 interceptions. And now Kevin O'Connell's thinking about pulling Josh Jobs, which would certainly be understandable if you wanted to do that. And as for the Detroit Lions, well, the past couple of weeks, they've looked a lot more like the unit that finished 2022 last in the league defensively. The Lions may have some breathing room in the division race, but they also finished the season with 2 matchups against Minnesota, sandwiched around a trip to Dallas. And the Lions play over that stretch the way they have the past couple of weeks, that division title that seemed like it was theirs is, well, not going to be theirs. NFC South, the worst division of football, continues to deliver, and continues to be the worst division of football, which doesn't make doing this segment any easier, especially trying to pick out a team on the NFC side, and you got 3 teams in one division that aren't really that good, and yet you gotta try to decide if you want to throw in the towel on one of those teams. Anyway, we'll get into that one a little. That little note aside. For the Buccaneers, offensively, they managed fewer than 300 yards of offense against the Colts. Defensively, they allowed 27 points, despite Indianapolis converting just 22 of 11 third down attempts. The reasons may change from week to week, but the results have been consistent, and at this point, in what is shaping up to be a lost season for Tampa, the team needs to face a cold hard fact: a full-bore rebuild is coming and necessary. What does that rebuild entail? Who knows? Maybe a change in head coach, most likely a change at quarterback. Although I will say this, even though they're at 4-7, the Buccaneers are not out of it. I think the Saints and Falcons are 5-6. So again, this division is terrible, and even though the Buccaneers are lost and they're on a bit of a cold streak at the moment, they are still very much capable of winning the division. And as for the Saints, back in the offseason, they thought the addition of Derek Carr would solve their offensive inefficiencies, but the point totals for this team indicate that is not the case. They have gone backwards since week 8. Now the Saints offense may have to find its rhythm. Short-handed, they're dealing with some injuries currently. Carr struggled with a healthy supporting cast. Now you put him with an unhealthy supporting cast and try to get him to stabilize that group. Good luck, especially in the red zone. Perhaps the Saints will try to rely more on Alvin Kamara and Taysom Hill in the coming weeks, provided Taysom Hill can hang on to the football. NFC West, one team this week, the Seattle Seahawks, and the Seahawks are in trouble at the moment. Going into the game against the 49ers, they were absent Kenneth Walker, and Geno Smith was banged up, and that plays a part, sure. But the offense continues to be a mess. Seattle's now gone 7 straight quarters of an offensive touchdown, and has only 3 in the last 4 games. The Seahawks are struggling badly at third down, going just 3 of 11 Thursday night after entering Week 12, ranked 31st in the league in third down conversions. So, is this team simply just a facade? Are they not as good as we thought they were? Probably. So division representatives this week, we got a triple threat matchup with the Vikings in the North, the Buccaneers in the South, and the Seahawks in the West. Who is this week's representative in the NFC? Well, it's not the Vikings, it's the Buccaneers. Back-to-back weeks, once again, the Buccaneers find themselves in this position. And once again, I am left to decide between the Buccaneers and an AFC team. So to go over the recap for throwing in the towel through the first 11 weeks, the Panthers, who have thrown the towel in on week 3, have fired their head coach, a move that seemed inevitable. Firing a coach after one season, especially before that season concludes, is never a good thing, but Frank Wright had one objective, and that was move the franchise forward, and through 11 games you could see that franchise was going nowhere but backwards. So understandable move right there, and that is the recap. Although I do have to keep an eye on the Packers and the Rams. Those teams are getting a little hot at the moment, so maybe something might be happening with those teams. That 7th spot is certainly open. But as for this week's edition, Chargers versus Buccaneers, which team do I pick? Well, it was a tough decision, but I'm not out on the Buccaneers because they can still win the division, so that just leaves the Los Angeles Chargers as this week's team. So yeah, I talked about the Chargers not being able to make the postseason, and that is looking like a reality. So then you move forward to what the offseason looks like. Well, you have your quarterback in Justin Herbert, but you don't necessarily have the pieces around him. So Brandon Staley, more likely than not, out the door. What about the general manager Tom Telesco? Is he out the door as well? I could certainly see that happen. I wouldn't say it's a certainty, but I wouldn't rule it out either. And with that will conclude this episode of NFL Discussion Throwing in the Towel. If you enjoyed this week's edition of Throwing in the Towel, hit that like button and subscribe button down below.